Hi, I'm Brad Townsend. I'm the Associate Director here at the Bipartisan Policy Center for Energy Innovation and also the Staff Director for the American Energy Innovation Council. I'm joined today by Dr. Wanda Austin, the former CEO and President of the Aerospace Corporation. And we're going to talk about energy innovation, specifically research and development at the Department of Energy. So, Wanda, thank you for being here today.
Brad, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and join the conversation.
Excellent. Well, so you've recently joined the American Energy Innovation Council, which is a project here at BPC, but you also recently retired as CEO. Could you tell us a little bit more about the work that Aerospace Corporation does, as well as sort of what piqued your interest in energy?
Certainly. Aerospace is a federally funded research and development center. We operate the FFRDC for the Department of Defense. And in that role, we were responsible for providing a lot of the engineering and technology review of plans for how we were going to get to space to ensure our national security. So Aerospace has been in existence since 1960, and I was really honored to lead that organization with 2,000 engineers and scientists that are working on some very interesting projects.
I can imagine some very hush-hush conversations that we can't talk about here.
Absolutely. But the connection is that in that role, I also had the opportunity to sit on a review panel reviewing all of the DOE energy labs and having an opportunity to look at the S&T investments that were ongoing across DOE and to try to come up with some recommendations on what we could do to strengthen that.
And so what was the sort of key finding from that discussion, and what do you think is most useful in terms of really optimizing the work that DOE is doing?
So I think some of the key findings really focus on the fact that DOE is uniquely positioned to really drive the train, if you will, on leadership of our energy investments for R&D to ensure our economic security and to ensure our national security going forward. The technical expertise that exists within DOE and the infrastructure that exists with the 17 labs is a real national resource for the United States and gives us an opportunity to make sure that we stay on the cutting edge of energy innovation.
And so you talk about security a little bit, and so in thinking about the importance of securing our energy systems and making them resilient to things like cyber attacks, but certainly there are a whole host of other threats to that reliability and resiliency. And so as we think about that relative to your work at the Aerospace Corporation, I think there's maybe some obvious connections, but I'm curious what some of the less obvious connections are and how those two things factor together.
So one of the things that is wonderful when things work well is we take it for granted. And you don't have to look far back in history to see examples of when we have natural disasters and people lose access to their energy sources, or you can't pump gas because there's no power at the pump station. The gas is there, but you can't get it into people's cars. When you have a brownout or a power out in a major city, the impact on the country is huge, and you can very quickly have a populace that is very unsettled because things that they really need in order to maintain their quality of life are put in jeopardy. So it becomes really important for us as a nation to make sure we have a plan for resilience, because there could be natural disasters which could occur, and there could be some intentional things that happen that could put that in jeopardy.
And do you think that we're adequately prepared for those circumstances?
I think that we can look at recent history and know that we're not adequately prepared, and to know that we struggle when natural disasters occur to be able to restore our energy capability for major cities within the U.S.
And Puerto Rico being a perfect example.
A perfect example today.
And so just to change tacks a little bit, I think one of the conversations that is ongoing here in D.C. is the question of basic versus applied research, what the appropriate role for the federal government is. And so in thinking about whether or not this framework of basic being this sort of very early stage research and applied being a latter stage, and again, very sort of firewalled conceptions. Has that been your experience? And if not, what's the reason why?
So I think that for DOE as well as for DOD, the challenge is that you need basic research because that's where the potential for innovation exists. And you have to invest in not only the facilities but the people and make sure they've got the resources that they need in order to do that basic research. But on the development end, the other extreme, you actually have to transfer that research into practical applications that in fact make things better. And so the challenge we have is what we call the valley of death, that we have work that's done in basic research and we have work that's done in what we call 6.3 or the more development, and we don't have a way of bridging that. We don't have a good process for moving and transferring that technology and the knowledge about why that's valuable into the more specific applications. And I think we need all of that. We need that full spectrum. We need people to be thinking really far ahead on what is the next real game changer going to be and where that opportunity exists. But we also need to recognize that we have real problems today that we need to focus on trying to solve and look at see how the research and development that we have can be applied to that. And on the other end, we have failures. We have things that didn't work the way we expected them to, and we need to go back and look at the technology that we're using there to see how to make it better.
And so in thinking about, it seems like we're sort of driving at the federal government having a role in trying to leverage what is effectively a limited number of resources to drive private sector investment into developing these technologies. What do you think that we should be doing that we're not to help accelerate that?
So one of the major things that we need to do is make sure that we're creating the path for the workforce, for the talent base, to make sure that they're getting the education that they need and that they're getting the training and the internships and the experience in different laboratories so that they have the opportunity to develop this innovative capability that we're looking for. And right now we're really struggling to develop that pipeline. Students are not electing to go and do advanced degrees in the physical sciences. So the overall STEM problem is really having an impact, particularly in this area. I think that we also need to make sure that the government, and in this case I would say specifically DOE, is looking at where's the architecture, what direction are we going in, how do we set priorities, how do we review whether or not we need to change the things that we're going after and leverage things that may come to fruition faster. So I think there are some real key roles for the government to play here, and making sure we've got adequate fellowships and funding for students, you know, and great relationships with the universities is really key.
So this sort of human capital component has a really significant implication or impact on our competitiveness long term, right?
Absolutely. Because in many instances, when you look at our universities, you say, well, we have a large number of students who are studying advanced degrees. But if you peel the onion a little bit more, you say, well, many of them are not U.S. citizens. And in times past, that was okay because many non-citizens stayed here and brought that knowledge to bear in the American economy. Today, we're seeing that a lot of them are leaving the U.S. and taking that knowledge and leveraging it for their own countries.
Yeah. And so in thinking about the economics behind this, which is, I think, you know, a message that that AEIC has really tried to drive home, is that, you know, there is a tremendous market opportunity developing globally.
Absolutely.
And so as we think about how we can best leverage the assets that we have, both in terms of the people, in terms of the national laboratories, in terms of the knowledge base at the Department of Energy, what's the best way that we should try to approach doing that to maximize competitiveness?
So I think, for starters, our leadership has to recognize and talk about the value and the importance of Americans staying in the competitive edge, you know, and I think what I think of as the bleeding edge of energy innovation, and send a strong message about this is an area that we feel strongly about and we're going to continue to support. When you feel or hear that programs are being cut, things like ARPA-E, which we think is a tremendous capability for bringing that innovation to bear, it really does not encourage people to make that investment, that personal investment, to be there.
Right. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Austin. To learn more, please visit our website at americanenergyinnovation.org. You can also see us on Twitter at the AEIC. Please feel free to leave some comments or questions, rather, in the comments below, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. Thank you very much.